Hi, I'm Jennifer. Today, I'm discussing vibrato. In this video, I'll give you an exercise for learning vibrato and how to teach it to students, whether in a group setting or an individual setting, like private lessons. And then after, I'll troubleshoot some common mistakes I see students making when they're trying to learn how to play with vibrato. First, when I'm introducing the subject to a student, I tell them that vibrato is one tool that we have to enhance a musical phrase. Then oftentimes I'll play a video of either a singer or a violinist, and they can physically see people performing with vibrato. We start with the phrase do, who. I say this phrase with them in a triplet rhythm. I start with the metronome at 60, and I have the triplet clicking, but if your metronome doesn't have that capability, quarter note equals 60 is the tempo. With the metronome clicking, we say do, who 4 times, or rest in between each do, who. Do, who, do, who, do, who, do, who. And the next step to this exercise when you're teaching a group would be to say do, who with only the air. Now, I'm gonna really hiss just so that you can hear it through the video, but if your students are really hissing, their tongue will be too high in the mouth for great tone. And for them, it's really gonna be more of an air sound instead of a hissy air sound. So first say do, who. Now say do, who with air only, no voice. The third step is saying do, who with air only while the flute is on the chin. Have them finger the note B or whichever note that you start with every day in your group class. So if you start with F, then have them finger F. If you start with B flat, have them finger B flat. I like to have my students start on B because it's the first note I teach, or one of the first notes I teach. Actually, it's the second note I teach. And it's just a comfortable range for flutists. Do, who, only air with the flute on the chin. Finally, the last step is to play do, who on B, just as we've been doing. And that's the exercise. It's great for warming up. You can combine this vibrato exercise with scale work. One way you could adapt this exercise to the chromatic scale would be like this. And you can get creative with how you incorporate this vibrato exercise to scale exercises or interval exercises within the warm-up time in your class. Now, one thing I would highly recommend when you're first starting to teach your students vibrato is pick exercises where the notes are very close together, the intervals are very small. Having to think about creating a large leap while learning a new skill, it's a lot of work. So I would highly recommend choosing the chromatic scale or major minor scales or intervals that are a third, perhaps, when you're playing these vibrato exercises. Another way you can make a variation of this exercise is start adding beats. So instead of just playing one beat of triplet, you can play 2 beats worth of triplets, like this. And so on. 3 beats, 4 beats. Perhaps eventually your students are playing 8 beats worth of triplet in one breath, like this. Now for individual instruction, you can follow the exact same procedure as group instruction, or if your student can whistle, I highly encourage you to adapt this exercise so that all the parts where it was only air and no voice, the student is actually whistling the rhythm instead of just blowing their air out with the pulses. So for example, after the student says do hoo hoo, then have them whistle the rhythm. And after they've whistled, if they can't whistle on pitch, that's no big deal at the moment. If they can, that's fabulous. That's so wonderful. But they don't have to worry about whistling on pitch. After they whistle, then it would be whistling with the flute in playing position. And finally, playing the B with vibrato, pulsing the vibrato on B. The oral cavity should feel the same as if they were still whistling. So as they play the flute, they should have the same feeling as if they were still whistling. Now I want to talk about 3 common mistakes that I see students making. The first would be moving their body or their head to create the pulses. It looks like this. Or they're either moving their whole body forward and back or their head to make the pulses happen. A very easy fix for this is to make sure that your student has a mirror where they can see themselves, either on their music stand or if it's an individual lesson, perhaps a full-length mirror in your studio or a practice room, or even a small mirror on the stand, just like for group instruction. Really helps eliminate body movement because they can see what's happening. Oftentimes they can't just feel that they're moving, so a mirror is like a flutist's best friend. One way you could actually help them with this is perhaps giving them something to sit against or stand against if the lesson is with a person who is standing up. So perhaps letting them sit all the way against a flat surface. Perhaps their chair has a straight back, so letting them sit at the back of the chair and ensuring that they keep all parts of their body on that chair, or allowing them to lean against the wall, making sure all parts of their back are on the wall at all times as they practice their vibrato exercise. The second common mistake I see students making is using the jaw, movement of the jaw, to create the pulses in their sound. So it'll look something like this. Almost like they're chewing something. Again, the mirror is a flutist's best friend for the flutist to see and have immediate feedback about what they need to do, stop doing, or what they need to change to make the pulses come from the breath versus coming from body movement. And the last common mistake I hear from students is there's no pulse at all in their sound. It's just a straight tone as they're trying to create vibrato. So in this case, I take the students back to the beginning process. So we say do hoo hoo, and I stay on the do hoo hoo with air only longer than someone who is creating a pulse. First, have the student say do hoo hoo, air do hoo hoo. It is so important that they can create the pulse with air only so that it can translate to the instrument. Now, this part may be where they need more air sound or practice with only air sound to get the pulse when they're actually playing the notes. So you may stay on this part, this step, a little longer before having them transfer to actually playing with sound. So they can hear the air, they can hear the pulse, they can feel the pulse. And if you can't hear them or they can't hear themselves creating the pulse, there's going to be no transfer once they try to play it on the instrument. I find that the youngest students especially become shy when you ask them to do things with only air. Really encourage them to make this ridiculously obvious. The air pulsing has to be heard by everyone in the room or by, someone across the hall, something that's exaggerated. Because if the pulse in the air isn't exaggerated, once the flute comes into play and you have to create sound, it's still going to sound like straight tone. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And also leave your variations of this exercise again in the comments below. Have a wonderful day.